Hello and welcome. We're here today at Rocket headquarters in Detroit with the Rocket CEO, Varun.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Zach.
The energy of the company and the city around it is electric. What is it that makes the culture of Rocket so unique, and how is it so connected to the city around us?
Yeah, I would say Rocket is a very special place. And that culture and energy, I would say, existed long before I got here. So I've been in the role for about 20 months now. And I think what's unique about Rocket is it is a great example of a company whose internal culture, focus on community, matches its vision and mission for the business that we do. And that business is home ownership. And so Rocket has been around for almost 40 years. We'll be 40 this year. So that's a legacy. We moved down to Detroit in 2010. We relocated our headquarters. We've spent about $200 million in community and philanthropic efforts since then. And it really speaks to our core mission, which is to help everyone home. That is our mission statement. And it's really focused on this idea of creating safe, sustainable home ownership for everybody. A lot of what makes Rocket, I think, truly special is just the investment in our culture. As you mentioned, we have a set of values that we call our isms. They reflect who we are, how we act, how we show up. And there are 16 of them. And I think what's really unique about Rocket is that, our value system is not just something we put on a wall and just refer to. This is very deeply tied into the language of how team members interact with each other. Some of our isms are examples like "we are the they," which is a statement about extreme ownership. "We'll figure it out," which is a statement towards solution centricity. "Do the right thing," which is about putting the client first. And these are words and phrases that you will hear just walking the halls, being on a mortgage production floor or interacting with the servicing team, is that we use our isms in day-to-day language. And I think that really speaks to the strength of our culture.
That's amazing. Just walking around the halls here, you see books published on the isms, you see them written on the walls, you hear people talking about them everywhere. So clearly that's pervasive. So you joined Rocket in 2023. You've been here just about 2 years. And you joined from Intuit. If I remember correctly, you were living in sunny Southern California, and then you decided to move your entire family to Detroit to take the CEO role. What is it that drew you in? What is it that made you want to take this role at Rocket?
Yeah, I think it was many things. I think I've been sort of tooling around in the fintech world for some time. I was at PayPal working on payment stuff. And then at Intuit, I primarily focused on sort of tax and credit. And I think a little bit of me is just motivated by wanting to build a better financial system and feeling like, many aspects of the system are not really designed to benefit the consumer, or in our case, the client. And so I sort of meandered into the tax world, got a chance to look at a lot of data. And I think from tax, really what motivated me to come to Rocket was housing, the mission of housing. In some ways, I feel like housing is like the last frontier of fintech, right? It's the bedrock of the American dream. It's 20% of the GDP. It's a huge market. I saw a company that had, a lot of data, and I really felt like to progress in the AI driven world, better data equals better models equal better experiences. And so, what attracted me fundamentally was, big unsolved problem, a company sitting on, a lot of proprietary data that could be used to create new disruptive experiences. And then the most important thing, I think, for me was just the culture. As we talked about earlier, it's a company that has a loving, empathetic, kind culture, and yet it is also a company that is competitive and likes to win. And the mortgage space is a competitive space. So I just saw a lot of opportunity for growth. I fell in love with the team, the leadership team in particular, and I haven't looked back.
Rocket and Plaid share a board member in Alex Rampell. And I remember hearing you and Alex Rampell give a talk about a year ago where you were talking about how AI was going to revolutionize the mortgage industry. How's it going? What's happening? And where's the future going to be with AI?
Yeah. I think, I think it's anyone's guess as to where this is all going. But I will say that, I think Rocket and our business is a very natural fit for benefiting from automation, personalization, and efficiency. When you think about the homeownership journey, and we'll exclude kind of the home search experience and the servicing experience, we've announced some news recently in the inorganic space there. But even if you look at just the home financing experience, like the bread and butter mortgage experience, I mean, you speak to someone on the phone, you get qualified for financial products, You provide data and documents as verification. That goes through a workflow. It then goes through things like underwriting. You go through title insurance. And so it's a very deterministic exchange of data with a human component that really provides empathy and support because it's such an emotional decision. And so we think of AI as really applying across the board to the entirety of that experience, right? Automating the process by which you provide your data and documents, providing coaching for someone you're talking to on the phone so that they can provide better empathetic support, that they can meet your needs, that they can really personalize the experience for you. Simplifying the process of underwriting, going from a task that requires many people and many manual steps to something that can be more automated and verified based on algorithmic concepts. And so, moving money, right? And so I think fundamentally for us, we're building a platform that extends through every part of that experience, from the document provision process and extraction and classification and categorization, through to the telephony systems that integrate with our mortgage bankers and the clients, through to the underwriting process, and then ultimately, into servicing, where you have a long-term relationship with the client. And we've seen some great benefits. I think we're on track this year to save our team members 1 million hours. And that is a serious productivity enhancement, which allows us to focus on the business of growing our business.
I love the concept that you say of once you have the data, you can then build amazing experiences on top of it. You can use AI and other tools to do so. If you could snap your fingers and modernize the consumer lending experience, what would you change?
Yeah, it's funny. I think I would get rid of the word experience, right? Like, I think the best experience is no experience at all, right? And I think one of the things that are interesting to me about fintech products and services in general, mortgage being maybe one of the most intense examples, is that they require work, right? They require drudgery. They require waiting and wondering, providing data, knowing where you stand, problems of confidence, of certainty, of value. And so, I envision a world where, an agentic AI or an AI-driven platform is doing the work for you, right? Like, why couldn't consumers be underwritten in real time, right? Why couldn't the deterministic exchange of data and the pre-qualification happen, instantly? And so a lot of it for me is just, you have a lot of systems that are legacy that connect to each other. And that's part of the reason we want to create a more consolidated, integrated experience, because a lot of the time you're providing the same data to 3 or 4 different systems, but the consumer or the mortgage processor or the lender is doing all the work, right? And so, to me, I think a significant advancement in automation, experience that is a little more invisible, behind the background, that just says, hey, Zach, you see this home, you qualify, you can have it right now with the click of one button. And so that's the kind of world that I want us to get toward. I think the process of buying a home is painful, it's lengthy, it's complicated. And then from a mathematical perspective, it's sort of expensive, it's complicated, and it's filled with friction. And so the more friction we can remove and the more seamless we can make the experience, it should really feel like no experience at all.
We at Plaid talk a lot about the concept of an instant experience. So you come in, you say, hey, this is who I am, and all your data gets uploaded automatically. And that kind of unlocks this totally. Sort of like no experience loan, as you talked about. So for me, Rocket stands out as one of our partners that uses Plaid in so many different areas, across Rocket Money, Rocket Mortgage, a bunch of different places. How's the partnership been for you, and what would you like to see us do more or differently?
Awesome. I would say the partnership has been, I think, very productive, very trusting, and very intimate, and I think that's what you want from a partner. Is you want someone who has a shared vision and wants to work together. And in many ways, Plaid is like the data backbone of Rocket, right? And so we use Plaid in many different businesses. We use it in Rocket Mortgage to allow clients to be able to easily verify assets, which is a big part of the mortgage, journey. Rocket Money leverages it to provide insights to consumers on helping them track their spending, helping them manage their budget, helping them build better credit and track their cash flow. And then even the Rocket Loans team also uses Plaid in order for consumers to be able to more easily qualify and provide examples of their assets and financial picture as well. And so it's been a great partnership. And I think you know me pretty well. It's all about data, right? And I think what's really interesting about the future is there's so much that we can do together if we think about the insights that exist in our combined companies' data sets. And, you and I have talked about this before, this idea of a data contribution framework that, creates a more holistic view of a consumer that can be used to create all kinds of benefits, right? Better financial experiences, better qualification, potentially a better credit system, something that really creates more fairness and equality across the world. And so I think the sky's the limit, but we're very grateful for the partnership so far.
One of the things for me that's the most interesting is at Rocket, you have an ecosystem of products that fit very nicely together. So obviously mortgage is the core. You do servicing in a big way. We've worked very closely with Rocket Money, of course, on the front end. And you've made some big news lately by announcing the acquisitions of Redfin and Mr. Cooper. What's the bigger vision? How do all these pieces fit together?
I think the way we think about it, I get asked this question a lot, are you a mortgage company? Are you a tech company? And I chuckle a little bit because technology, I would argue every company aspires to be or is a technology company. And that's more of a how than a what. And so our vision is that we want to build an integrated homeownership platform, right? And that's something that we think is the first of its kind. With respect to the inorganic news that we announced, it's really in service to a couple of key realizations. I think the first realization is that, the industry of home search and real estate, and the industry of mortgage financing, title closing, and the industry of servicing, today they exist as almost like separate verticals, but they're very interconnected. You go through a home search experience in order to get financed. Once you're financed, you end up in a servicing relationship. Through that servicing relationship, you may qualify or be eligible to be recaptured for new financial products, a new purchase, a cash out refinance. And so we had this big aha moment where we realized that these three sort of funnels are actually interconnected and they can combine to create a super funnel. And if you can create a super funnel, you can participate in more of the economics around the entire value chain. And if you do a good job with that and you leverage technology, you can create more value for the consumer. Today, like on a $400,000 home, 10% of the cost goes into fees. And a lot of those fees are repeated because you're providing data at different points to different sort of middle layers and middlemen. And so we think we can make that whole process a lot simpler. And so that was one of the theses. The other thing that we really thought about is just how do we create a more balanced business model for Rocket itself, and how do we make sure that the company can actually thrive in all kinds of market conditions? When rates are low, you obviously are very successful in driving a refinance business, but when rates are high, your servicing business continues to be a source of strength and new client acquisition. And so that's sort of the context for why we wanted to do these acquisitions. So Redfin really helps us accelerate our top of funnel strategy. It helps us build relationships. The total funnel is now, something like 62 million monthly active users that will be coming to the Rocket platform. When you look at, connecting that to the Rocket funnel, they will be able to interact with 3,000 of the best loan officers, 10,000 or, tens of thousands of mortgage brokers. And then, when you go into servicing, there's 10 million clients there in the servicing book in totality. That's 1 in 6 mortgages that you will see every month. And so the beautiful thing about that too is just the data, right? Because all of a sudden now you have theoretically almost triple the data than what Rocket's ecosystem as a standalone would have had. And then you can create a lot of experiences around a better consumer identity, better workflow, better data management, better recapture, and then ultimately pass a lot of savings onto the client with a more seamless and sort of frictionless experience. So, that's kind of the thesis of how we saw the world. I mean, we also wanted to be more of an ecosystem as well. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to build better distribution, to partner with realtors, to partner with mortgage brokers, and so just other players in the industry as well. And, the most important thing too was just the culture fit between the companies. And, we felt like I spent a lot of time with Jay Bray and Glenn Kellerman, who are the CEOs of Mr. Cooper and Redfin respectively. And they're just visionary leaders. I think we shared a common view on the future of home ownership. We wanted to win together. We felt like we could work well together, that our companies had complementary, culture, values, and passion. One conversation led to the next, and here we are.
Yeah, I love the idea of being able to sign up once with Rocket, create a profile, browse for houses, buy a house, apply for a loan, get my loan serviced, and then have kind of Rocket money along the way helping me build my financial picture. And
that's right. And the Rocket Money piece also is super important here because, as you pointed out, I mean, preparation to get into the house is the equivalent of financial fitness, right? You have to have good credit, you want to have savings, you want to have good cash flow. And then once you're in a home, staying in the home is also an exercise in financial fitness, right? So that you can make your mortgage payments and handle your property taxes. And so, servicing, Rocket Money, they really create, better retention for our clients as a whole as well.
All right, shifting to you for just a minute. You've always struck me as a brilliant and thoughtful, yet incredibly humble person. How has your own personal brand of leadership evolved or stayed the same as you've come into the Rocket environment?
I would say it's always an evolution. I actually feel like the further I've gone in my career, the more I realize that I have to learn. It's been very humbling in general. But I think, there are a few things that I have really embraced coming into Rocket, and the mortgage business and the homeownership business in general is a very complex business. And there are, many industry professionals and leaders at Rocket who have immersed in that for decades, right? And so the most important thing I think for me in the beginning was to really listen and to really learn, because the natural experience that many of my leaders have is just something that there's no substitute for that experience. And so a big part of the learning journey was really around building a balanced leadership team and elevating leaders who had amazing experiences within the company with leaders from the outside, and making sure that those teams and those leaders would interact with each other well, and that they would strengthen and reinforce each other. And so definitely a lot of learning that kind of went into that. And I would say learning that still continues. I think sort of one of the trickiest things about leadership is, avoiding the illusion of mastery and sort of getting to this place where your ego and your own sort of sense of self-worth kind of overtakes the leadership of an organization. And so, I really believe in a shared leadership style. I like to do things with my team. I like to make decisions together. There are moments where you have to be decisive and you have to weigh in and make sort of a ruling call. But by and large, I like to work in a way where your team wins and loses together.
It's a big testament to both you and to the Rocket culture, how well the fit has gone so far.
Thank you.
Just to wrap up, what comes next for Rocket? What are you excited for in the future?
I think we've got our hands pretty busy right now. So I think integration right now is very top of mind for us. But I think, the beauty of home ownership is it sort of is this unlimited growth potential space. And what I'm excited about is just, I just feel like we're at a really interesting precipice around evolutionary change with artificial intelligence. But what I also think is exciting is, artificial intelligence is sort of in many ways a precursor to new enabling technologies, right? And so, 3D printing, robotics, materials engineering, right? And what I think is cool about AI is not just, the automation and personalization, but really the enabling of new technologies that could make homeownership even more accessible and more sustainable. And so, I imagine a world where, technology is not just driving better models and insights and workflows, but it's actually helping us manufacture and produce homes, at a different level of scale, with a different level of value and a different sort of distribution mechanism. And so some of that may be a little bit longer term, but, I think a lot of where we're at right now is sort of building a foundation so that we can just do more in the space of homeownership.
Well, Varun, thank you so much for making the time for this. This was an awesome conversation.
Anytime.
And I look forward to many more years of partnership.
Likewise. Thank you, Zach.